So tonight, I'm going to be talking about the meaning of love, and or at least I'm going to have a go at talking about the meaning of love. And as I say, we'll have a tea break around 8 o'clock for about 10 minutes. And then there'll be a chance to ask questions in the second half. We're going to conclude the evening with a threefold puja, a ritual, to finish, and we'll finish around 9. Yeah. Okay, good. So welcome if you've just arrived. And yeah, so the meaning of love. We've got these titles. I was just given this title a couple of weeks ago. And I guess what came to mind was a particular story that I read some years ago. I read it in a book by an order member called Vasantra, and he wrote about it in a book. I don't know if you can see this, Tales of Freedom. That's the book. It's a true story. So I've since read about, read this story online as well. But Vasantra tells it really well. And so I'm going to tell you the story, this true story, and hopefully that will resonate with you in some way or another. And then I'll sort of use that to talk about love, the meaning of love. So the story is set in, it's a true story. It did happen, as it were. But we go back to early 19th century, maybe mid 19th century. And we're in China, in a small village in China. So 19th century China. And there's a sort of square, I guess maybe a sort of market square or village square. And there's some commotion happening in the square. There's a crowd gathered in the square, and they're sort of jeering and braying, and there's this air of sort of excitement, but also something unsavory about the sort of feel of the crowd. And then it becomes a bit more obvious as to what the crowd are gathered for. So there's this man who's being held by two other large men, and he's being dragged towards a horse, which is standing in the sort of, the crowd are sort of surrounding. So it's standing in the middle so he's being dragged towards this horse, and he's screaming with terror and yeah, real panic and desperation on his face. And the horse isn't a normal, ordinary horse. It's made of metal. It's a metal horse. In the story, as Vasantra tells it, he says it's made of copper. When I read about it elsewhere, they said it was an iron horse, but it's a metal horse. And this man is dragged to the horse and then strapped onto it, tied onto it. And at first, it's not obvious to anybody looking, if you can imagine the scene, as to what this weird scenario is about. Why is this man so desperate? Why is he terrified? And what's happening? What is this horse, this copper horse or iron horse? And then it gradually becomes obvious that the horse, in its sort of metal belly, there's a whole heap of firewood, which is going to be set alight. And the horse will become fiery hot as this man is strapped to it. And it's an execution. It's an execution that's particularly gruesome that's about to take place. The man is going to be burned alive, strapped to a scalding hot iron horse. And the crowd are sort of cheering and, like they're at some sort of, I don't know, sporting event or something. It's a sort of horrible scene. And it turns out that the man is a thief. And we don't know what he'd stolen. We don't know the severity of his crime. Probably it was severe enough anyway for an execution. Anyway, on into the scene comes this foreigner who doesn't know what's going on, and he is dressed in a chubba, which is a Tibetan, traditional Tibetan outfit, and he's not from these parts. I don't know what he's doing in this Chinese village, but he's passing through, and so he's interested in what's going on, and he says to somebody in the crowd, "What is it?" And they tell him that this man is a thief, and he's going to be executed in this horrible way. And somebody else comes. One of the sort of guards is approaching with this firebrand, and he's getting closer and closer to the center of this assembly with this firebrand. And of course, you can imagine the terror on the thief's face, not just his face. He's just in absolute sort of agony before the physical agony has begun. And this Tibetan stranger, as the firebrand is getting closer to the horse, this copper horse, this Tibetan stranger shouts out suddenly and says, "That man is innocent. I am the thief. I committed the crime. You've got the wrong man." And suddenly there's a sort of hushed silence in the crowd. Nobody quite knows what to do. It's like everybody pauses before they can work out what to do. And then whoever the sort of guards, the police, the authorities are, they sort of turn on this Tibetan stranger and look at him with real hatred, because not only is he the thief, but they could have murdered the wrong person. So the man on the horse is untied. The so-called person they thought was the thief is untied, and this foreigner, this stranger, is strapped onto the horse, and he doesn't resist, and the crowd are braying, and the fire in the belly of the horse is lit, and the thief, or the man who was the thief, can't believe what's happened. He can't. He's looking at this foreigner and cannot believe what's happened. The man on the horse now, this Tibetan foreigner, he just sits very, very calmly. He sits very, very calmly, and as the horse heats up, he doesn't flinch, and as it burns him, he doesn't flinch. He sits like he's a statue, some sort of equestrian statue, looking noble, looking upright, and looking at the sky above him. Just he sits with perfect poise and equanimity, which is enough to quieten the crowd. So they're now they're now sort of sobered into silence as they watch this phenomenon of a man dying with complete composure. And he dies, but in a way that surprises and moves even everybody around him. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the town, there are two other Tibetan travelers who are looking for their companion. And he's not just their companion, he's their teacher. He's a very advanced Tibetan master called Dola Jigme Khalsang. And they're looking for him, and he seems to have they were all together and then he just disappeared. And they inquire after him, and it's a small village, and people tell them that, oh yes, there was this Tibetan stranger, and he died on this iron horse, this copper horse, that he was a thief. And these two companions realized what had happened, that Dola Jigme Khalsang must have seen this situation, and the only way that he could help this thief on the horse was to take his place, to say that that he was the thief, and to take his place and to sacrifice himself. So that's the story. It happened. Dola Jigme Khalsang was a Nyingma. That's one of the sects of Tibetan Buddhism, one of the four great traditions in Tibetan Buddhism. He was a great Nyingma teacher, and he had practiced, I guess, from a very, very early age, very intensively practiced according to the Bodhisattva ideal, this ideal of gaining enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And it's the ideal of supreme compassion. And it had been, well, I can't really imagine that scenario, but he must have been so moved by the fate that was going to befall this stranger, moved by compassion to take his place. In the Tibetan tradition, there are practices meditation practices where you imaginatively exchange self and other. You imaginatively put yourself in somebody else's shoes, as it were. You exchange them. Our natural tendency, our human tendency, is to put ourselves first. It's what's called self-cherishing. We always tend to put ourselves at the center of the universe, and that's not something that we need to feel guilty about. It's an innate, natural tendency. But Dola Jigme Khalsang was working against that innate tendency through imaginative practices of exchanging self and other, of taking on another person's suffering and exchanging his self. And that's what then he ended up actually doing, not just in meditation. That's how he met his death. So it's a very strong story. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to tell it in a way. It's a very, very strong story, but I find it a very moving story, albeit it's got some horrific aspects to it. The torture, particularly the way that they were executing, well, in the end, Jigme Khalsang. But I think it gives us an indication of the meaning of love from a Dharmic perspective, from a Buddhist perspective. Because love in Buddhism is part of an ideal In fact, you could say it's synonymous with wisdom. And normally how it's talked about is as enlightened compassion, or enlightened, you could say it's enlightened. We do the Metta Bhavana. Well, this would be enlightened Metta, or Maha Maitri, as it's sometimes called. Maha Maitri, the great love, the great love. So love in Buddhism isn't, in this sense, it's the ideal isn't erotic love. It's not attached love in any sense. So I guess that would be erotic, romantic love. It would be parental love, love that one might have for a family member. All of those loves. It's not to say that they're wrong or seen as sinful in Buddhism. It's just that that's not the ideal. They're not the ideal. The ideal is a love that is completely without attachment, and it's a love that doesn't require any reward. It has no expectations of reward or any result or any outcome. And it's a love that doesn't depend on us knowing anybody. This man was a stranger to Dola Jigme Khalsang. He was a stranger to him. He'd never seen him before. And he was a thief. So this is the Metta Bhavana practice. If you've done the Metta Bhavana practice, which most of you will have done, taken into real life and taken to its highest form of giving up oneself for another. So Maha Maitri is it's an ideal. It's not an ideal that I have realized. My life is I'm less self-centered than I was when I started practicing some years ago, but I've still got a long way to go before I overcome those bonds of self-clinging and of attachment. But it's an ideal that I do aspire to, and every time I practice and every time I do the Metta Bhavana I was going to say, but actually any meditation practice, it's this ideal, this love that I'm trying to cultivate in my heart, in my mind. And it's this love that inspires me to practice outside, off the cushion as well, although I've got a long way to go. One thing perhaps to sort of clarify, because the story is so strong, is that Buddhism doesn't advocate martyrdom. So although Jigme Khalsang did sacrifice himself, that's not part of the ideal. It's not that Buddhists would aspire to die for anybody, for others. It's just that, and it's certainly not done on the basis of some belief of a reward in some afterlife. It's not that. It's just that what the ideal is, and what Dola Jigme Khalsang was obviously very, very in touch with, is a complete empathy, a complete feeling for, a complete solidarity with all life, with all living beings. A transcendence of a sense of sort of separateness of me and you. But more than a sort of transcendence of separateness, that all sounds too intellectual. It's a feeling for all life, a complete resonance with all human life, but not just human life, with life. And it's out of that solidarity, that empathy, that compassion arises. So when that sort of empathy and that solidarity meets suffering, the natural response is to try and help alleviate that suffering. That's what enlightened compassion is. It's attempt to alleviate suffering, and at its highest, it goes beyond all self-concern. It goes beyond even a desire to live. So there's a preparedness in a bodhisattva to give up life and limb, to give up one's own life and limb, if that helps alleviate suffering. But it's not a worked out thing. It's not a theoretical thing. It's just this force that moved him to do that. Yeah. So I want to say a few things about how we can sort of cultivate this sort of love, this sort of Maha Maitri. I'm going to say a few things now, then we'll meditate, and then I'll say maybe a little bit more after tea. But also, I want to come back to this story on Friday. I'm going to talk again on Friday, and I want to talk about this story again, but from another perspective. But for now, I want us to sort of reflect a little bit on how we can cultivate more of this selfless love, this solidarity. Now, the Metta Bhavana practice is obviously designed to help us to do this. It is a transformation of the heart. It's a transformation of our heart and, well, also our will. But also, most of our life takes place outside of meditation, unless you're a very, very devoted meditator on a retreat. You're probably likely to be meditating less than you are living, off the cushion. Certainly, when I've been on intensive meditation retreats or even solitary retreats, I don't think the hours that I've meditated have added up to more than the hours that I've sat around or read a book or gone for a walk or cooked a meal or had dinner or whatever it is. So for most of us, most of our lives takes place off the cushion. And in a way, our practice has to be both on the cushion and off the cushion. If we're only practicing when we're meditating, then that might be, an hour a day, maybe less, maybe half an hour a day. And that won't transform us, not really. It's a good start. I don't mean to knock it. And, a lot of the time, I and Subhadramati Maitreya Bandhu, others will be saying, Karavavati will be saying, cultivate a daily meditation practice, even if it's only half an hour or 20 minutes or something. So I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect, that sort of practice, but it won't lift us probably to the heights of enlightened compassion. You might be thinking, my goodness, after the Jolly Dollar Jigme Khalsang story, I don't want to be enlightened. You might kind of think, oh, that doesn't sound very attractive. And but of course, enlightened compassion doesn't need to mean sacrificing ourselves in gruesome ways for other beings. It means freedom. Actually, what it means is the living in a way where we're not bound by the smallness of our likes and dislikes, our pettiness, even our pleasures and pains. We're living in a larger way, literally, actually, because the consciousness that an enlightened being occupies is vast. But off the cushion, to go back to off the cushion, I think that, what I'm going to encourage is that we practice off the cushion a sense of kindness and generosity. That we make generosity and kindness, friendliness, maybe even kindness is too lofty a word. Maybe we just make friendliness and generosity the sort of natural currency of our being. I think we should be able to do that if we've been practicing for any length of time. Maybe you haven't been, and you still are naturally friendly. I think friendliness is something that we should always be able to pretty much always do. I remember Bhante Sangharakshita at a international conference of Buddhist teachers, and he was on a panel, and there was another well-known Buddhist teacher, I won't say who. Well, there were several of them on the panel, and the panel were asked something like, and I'm probably paraphrasing and misremembered, what is what's the basic kind of Buddhist virtue? What should you be doing if you're a Buddhist all the time? And this other teacher said happiness. A Buddhist should just be happy. And happiness is the sort of basic quality of a Buddhist. And Bhante Sangharakshita, he didn't sort of, he could be quite forthright, even very forthright and challenging. And he turned to this other Buddhist teacher and said, "No, I don't think that's right. I saw you earlier this morning, and you didn't look very happy to me." What he said is that the basic Buddhist kind of act is one can always be friendly. One can always be friendly. So even that might be a lot to aspire to. Always being friendly might be a lot to aspire to. And after all, Sangharakshita wasn't perfect, and I don't know if he always lived up to that. He certainly did when I have encountered him. But being friendly seems to be something that we all know. We don't have to be advanced practitioners. We kind of know that. And perhaps this week, particularly this week that we're on retreat, I know we've got a really full program and things, but I'm going to encourage each of us to just take on this extra practice of, can I remember to be friendly? Or can I remember to be generous? And you might not be able to do that all the time. And I don't know, you might be working with difficult colleagues or find yourself in a tricky meeting and forget. So one thing that perhaps you could do, if you wanted to, was to just make a bit of a commitment to doing one friendly or generous act every day, just because you're on this retreat, over and above what you'd normally do. Yeah, so a conscious, friendly, generous act. And it could be small. It doesn't have to be some huge sacrifice. I think that would be a really good way to enhance your retreat experience. And in a way, the basis of Buddhist ethics comes from that. It is based on this friendliness, this well-wishing, this kindness, which it aspires to this sense of solidarity. And that solidarity that I was talking about, I don't mean, of course, in that political sense. I mean, it's a solidarity with another living being, a resonance with life. It's like consciousness resonates with consciousness. Life resonates with life. And it's that sort of state that we're aspiring to for all beings. Yeah? For all beings. It's sort of universal. The other thing I want to draw out with about this ideal is, well, I've avoided talking about the word love. I've said a little bit about love, but love in English it covers such a vast sort of range of emotions, and at its sort of most misleading, love can be mere sentimentality. Um, um, you can sort of sign off an email saying love Jnanavaca, and I probably don't mean love. It's just a sort of convenient way of ending an email or something. But what I also mean by sentimentality is where it's a sort of it's possible to feel very, I don't know, moved in the metta bhavana practice, or moved in your life, moved by something you've read in the news, moved by the suffering around us. It's possible to somehow be moved and yet be unchanged. And that's what I mean by sentimentality. Do you know what I mean by well, I've felt it, where I feel, oh yes, my heart's really sort of moved by something. I feel for somebody. And then I quite like feeling moved. I quite like that sense of, oh, this is me really practicing. And before I know it, I've somehow got off on being moved. And it's become about me again. How kind and friendly and generous I am. That's what I mean by sentimentality. If it makes no difference in my actions in the world, it just becomes, I think it becomes actually even sort of counterproductive to Buddhist practice. We become pseudo-spiritual. Uh, um, I don't know if you've met pseudo-spiritual uh, people. I mean, I'm not saying that there are always people like that, but sometimes I've met people who are very self-consciously trying to be friendly and kind, but underneath you can sense that there's an aggression. You can sense that if you don't agree with them, there'll be a real reaction. So that's what I mean also by sentimentality. And that's not metta. That's not metta. Sort of watch for these kind of sort of near enemies of love. I want to just read you something that Viktor Frankl said. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who lived in the 20th century, and he lived during the Second World War. You'll probably have heard of him. Many of you will have heard of him. And he survived not just Auschwitz, but I think he was a prisoner in 4 Nazi concentration camps, and he survived. And he sort of created after the war his own psychiatric methods, and he wrote quite a bit. But one of his most famous books is Man's Search for Meaning, and this comes from Man's Search for Meaning. So let me read you it. Love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of his personality. No one can become fully aware of the very essence of another human being unless he loves him. By his love, he is enabled to see the essential traits and features in the beloved person. And even more, he sees that which is potential in him, which is not yet actualized, but yet ought to be actualized. Furthermore, by his love, the loving person enables the beloved person to actualize these potentials by making him aware of what he can be and of what he should become. He makes these potentialities come true. I'm going to read that again, and I'll substitute the he's for she's if I can. Love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of her personality. No one can become fully aware of the very essence of another human being unless she loves her. By her love, she is enabled to see the essential traits and features in the beloved person. And even more, she sees that which is potential in her, which is not yet actualized, but yet ought to be actualized. Furthermore, by her love, the loving person enables the beloved person to actualize these potentialities. By making her aware of what she can be and what she should become, she makes these potentialities come true. So what that speaks to me of is I'm really struck by Viktor Frankl talking about potentialities being actualized. The person who loves sees the potential in the person that they're loving and helps actualize that potential, which is growth. So metta, maitri, friendship, friendliness even, in its Buddhist sense, is to do with encouraging the growth in another being, in another human being. At least that's what it would be if there was a chance. It would be encouraging that potential. It would be seeing that potential and then encouraging it. So again, I think that is so different from just feeling pity for somebody or feeling their pain but not doing anything about it. It's so different from sentimentality. It's actually helping another being grow in whatever way they can. Okay, there's more that I want to say about this, but I think it's probably time that we meditate. So if you'd like to set yourself up comfortably, you might want to sit in front of your shrine and you might want to look away from your screen, or you're welcome to just have the screen in front of you. So I'll lead us in a short meditation. We'll be meditating for about 15-20 minutes. And we'll be trying to connect with this sense of metta, this sense of solidarity, this sense of empathy with all life, but I'll lead us into that. And of course, we normally start that off by becoming aware of how we are right now, whether we're feeling friendly or unfriendly or however. We just take a sort of an assessment of how we are, and then we'll cultivate a sense of well-wishing for ourselves, and then we'll move outwards. Okay, so I'm just going to get myself ready. Jnanavaca is going to dim the lights in the room. So settling down in your seat. You want a sense of being comfortable, but also being upright. And as you settle, taking a few deeper breaths. And bringing your awareness into your body and letting go of whatever preoccupations there are in the mind. And softening your face. Just by bringing awareness to the muscles in the face and imaginatively allowing them to soften. Just by doing that, you can release tension in the body. So softening the eyes and the muscles around the mouth and jaw. Imagining the forehead, the brow becoming smooth. And then bringing awareness down into the legs. Imagining the muscles in the legs softening. Just noticing the sensations you can feel in the legs. The actual sensations of contact, temperature, touch. Imagining the legs becoming heavy and soft. And areas of tension in the shoulders or in the belly. Imagining them just melting into the ground beneath you. It's like you're combing through your body with your awareness, smoothing it out, smoothing out any knots of tension. And then just noticing how you are in yourself, your general mood, how the heart is. And however you are, see if you can Acknowledge that with friendliness, with a gentle, friendly, patient awareness, like you're greeting a friend. Or like a friend would greet you. Wishing yourself well. And then bringing to mind a friend. And seeing if you can have a sense of solidarity with them. Wishing them well. And then broadening the scope of our metta to include all those who are in states of suffering in the world. Sickness of the body, sickness of the heart or mind, whatever pain there is, sending rays of metta, of well-wishing, of solidarity into the world. Metta like golden light, healing light, radiating from each of us out into the world, meeting suffering with love. And then including all beings, whether they're in states of suffering or not, all beings, living and those who've died, wishing them well. And then beginning to let go of effort, just sitting in awareness without trying to do anything in particular, for a little bit longer. And the way of love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. Birds make great sky circles of their freedom. How do they learn it? They fall, and falling, they're given wings. Good. Okay, so we're going to have a break now for about 10 minutes. So a chance to go and make yourself a cup of tea. We'll come back here at 10 past 8, and I'll say a little bit more, and then there'll be a chance to ask questions in through the chat facility. Okay, see you soon.
Okay,
good. So can you hear me now? Hopefully you can hear me now. I had some trouble with our microphone. Hopefully it's working now.
I'm just checking.
Yeah, I'm just checking. Okay, sound is back. Hooray, so I'm back. So yeah, all I was saying is welcome back from tea, so you haven't missed anything. And I was also saying that you've got a chance in this bit to ask questions if you want to. So if you have got questions, then you can write them in the chat. I've got another couple of things maybe to say, and then we'll have a chance to hear from you, at least through the chat. So I've sort of told this story of Dola Jigme Khalzang. It's very moving, I think, inspiring, strong, challenging story of what Buddhist compassion might eventually look like, where somebody is, I mean, of course, it wouldn't always be acted out in this way, but there would be a preparedness to even give up one's life if that was, I don't know, the best thing to do in the circumstances. And I don't know how you weigh that up, and I don't know if I would even be able to do that. But anyway, Jigme Taozang did do that. And I've talked about more at our level, perhaps, just trying to be more friendly, more generous, off the cushion, and making a bit of a precept of that in our lives on this retreat, if we can. And I've talked a little bit about what metta isn't, what love isn't from a Buddhist perspective, what this ideal of love isn't. Because, of course, love in English covers a whole spectrum of relationships and emotions and mental states. But I've talked about this unattached empathy, solidarity for all life. So what I want to just touch on, and I've also talked about how that then isn't just an inner state, it actually means something in action. It particularly is directed towards helping people grow, helping people overcome suffering. It finds itself enacted. If it's real, that's what will happen. So what I want to touch on just briefly is that metta, this state of love, transcends the physical body. It transcends our physical body, and it transcends the physical body of others. So what I mean by that is that Buddhism teaches that consciousness isn't just limited to, I don't know, some part of our body, our heads, or wherever you might imagine. It's not limited to that. That consciousness, whatever consciousness is, it's more like the body is in consciousness rather than the consciousness is in the body. At least that's a more sort of true way of looking at it from a dharmic perspective. That metta can transcend, therefore, our physical form, reach out to touch, as it were, somebody else's mind, and distances of space don't affect that. Just as you can bring somebody to mind across, who's in another country, metta can reach them. I think I don't know if that sounds all too weird and spooky, but even like a gathering like this, where we know that somebody's in Siberia or Serbia, and somebody's on the Isle of Wight, and somebody's in Hackney, and we can have a sense of somehow of being a community practicing together across space. So I think that is part, at least it's part of my experience. I hope you have a sort of intuition of that, or maybe even a stronger sense of that for yourself. If you don't, then all I'm trying to do is maybe loosen maybe this skeptic in you that says, no, the consciousness is just bound by the body, or it's just brain function. And then I also believe the tradition when it says that love, metta, transcends death. So when we bring people who have died to mind and send them love, send them metta, I believe that has a real effect. In fact, the Buddhist tradition says that when the body has died and the consciousness is freed from the physical body, it's even more sensitized. It's even more acutely aware of, it picks up on thoughts and feelings and emotions from people around them. So I wanted to sort of say that whatever's going on is deeply, deeply beyond our common sense assumptions. It's deeply mysterious. And that when we engage in thoughts of well-wishing, either in meditation or in everyday life, we're somehow having a real effect in the world. Of course, it's subtle, and there are many other things going on in the world. And I'm not saying that I don't know, things like this pandemic are going to be cured by well-wishing. I don't mean that. I mean that consciousness can touch consciousness. There are other levels of existence also going on, but nevertheless, this is a real phenomenon. So I hope I might say more about that on Friday, but I hope that we don't just think of metta as some sort of I don't know, Good Samaritan kind of friendliness that is a bit prosaic or something. I think it's deeply mysterious, deeply profound, and we really don't know what's going on. And I think if you keep meditating, you'll have more and more experience of that, of consciousness transcending form, of consciousness transcending physical form. And then on Friday, I might talk a little bit more about a sort of Buddhist perspective on that and why that is. Okay, so I'm going to sort of pause there and see if there are any questions on anything I've said so far. And yeah, see what you make of that. We'll have about 20 minutes or so of questions, if there are some. So, Jnanavaca, yeah, I'm ready.
So there's a couple on attachments.
Mhm.
On so I need to find.
And Jnanavaca is just pausing to look for questions.
So thoughts on following the path and also having relationships.
Ah, yes.
And also attachment towards one's children. Would somebody who's enlightened say suffer if their child died?
So Jnanavaca is just, I don't know if you could hear him, but he just read out a couple of questions about attachment. And, one was about being on the path, on being on the Buddhist path and having relationships. And then another was about attachment to, say, if you're a parent, to your children. And would an enlightened being feel pain if their child died? So let's take the first one. I mean, they're related, of course. I think the first thing to say is that we're Buddhists. We're not Buddhas. So in our lives, my life, I will experience attachment. I will experience something more like unattached love, but I'll also experience love with attachment. I'm working with both, and that's sort of fine. Just as I also experience craving and ill will, and lots and lots of states that a Buddha wouldn't experience. I think part of Buddhism is also being really pragmatic about where we are on the path. It's both being really pragmatic about where we are on the path. So for me, yes, I haven't transcended attachment or feeling hurt or etc. etc. I could list all my faults, but I won't. So I haven't transcended loads of things. So Buddhism is about being pragmatic about where we are, but it's also being clear about what the ideal is, where we're trying to get to. So that's why I was making that distinction. So where we're trying to get to is this love without attachment. Yeah, this unconditional love for all beings, not just for the people that we're attached to. Our romantic partner or our family or some very, very close friends. Or now, I'm not saying that that's bad, but the ideal is a sort of profound, unattached solidarity with all life. Yeah. So on the path, what I would suggest is that it doesn't mean that you have to give up your relationships where you've got attachment, but I think a pragmatic way of approaching it is to make sure that, say you've got a partner who you really love, make sure that you also have other people in your life, friendships in your life. Cultivate friendships where there's less attachment, but where there is some strength of feeling, and some sense of solidarity. I think what happens in our Western culture so easily is that the ideal is seen as the ideal relationship is that one romantic relationship with the perfect partner, and then that might be extended to the nuclear family. So all I'm trying to say is that Buddhism doesn't have that as an ideal. It transcends that sort of attached love. But on the path, I don't think you have to sort of think that you have to give all of that up. You can practice within those relationships, if you sort of mean. You can practice with them. Yeah, but by creating a bigger and bigger sphere of concern and friendship around you. So I hope that helps. In terms of the question about an enlightened being, is that, have I got that right, Jnanavaca? An enlightened being, would they suffer if their child died? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an enlightened being. I don't believe that an enlightened being somehow becomes cold and unfeeling. I don't think that's how it is. I think that they would feel even more deeply for the suffering of other beings. There would be this, as I say, this resonance of life with life. At the same time, there would be this wisdom perspective, and that's what I'm going to talk about next Friday, this Friday, this wisdom perspective that recognizes that all life ends in death. All life that has taken form ends in death. There would be a complete sort of acceptance of that. There would also be, that would be in the context of knowing that death isn't the end of our journey. So the experience of loss through death, bereavement, whether it's a child or a partner or a parent, or that would be possibly very different to us unenlightened ones who would suffer. It wouldn't be unfeeling, but there would be a perspective that would find meaning in it. It wouldn't be sort of devastating. Yeah, and maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe there wouldn't be even the sort of suffering that we can imagine. I can't really say, but it's said that an enlightened being, their equanimity is never really shaken. Yeah, at our own level, my own level. I mean, this is still above me, but I want to read you something else that Viktor Frankl said. And remember that this man saw and experienced horrendous suffering, some of the most horrendous things that have happened in the 20th century. And he says, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. I'm not going to unpack that, but I think that a Buddha, an enlightened being, would have the largest possible context of meaning, and this sense of life and death, the passing of life and death, the passing of universes would somehow be included in that context. And there would be a sense that, yes, this material world, this phenomenal world is painful, and there's something that transcends that is unshakable. Yeah. So hopefully that Well, I don't know if it addresses your question or not, but anyway, I've sort of talked around it. Yeah, thank you. Yanadai, any others?
Yeah, there's a few questions around self-love. So one is just general tips. The other is, can you love others if you struggle to love yourself?
Okay.
And can I add the last one as well?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, which is working with the contradiction between practicing the Metta Bhavana but not thinking that they could do, say, what the NHS doctors and nurses do. Sort of contradiction between, I guess you talked about a bit, ideal and that person's reality.
I'll leave that one. Can I come back to that one? Because I want to address this one about self-love. And what did you say? What the second one was? It was
Can you? So first one was the general
self-love. Yeah.
Self-love, and the second one was, can one love others if one struggles to love oneself?
Okay. So I think that self-love or self-metta is important. Somewhere Bhante Sangharakshita talks about that there are only two needs that we have that need to be satisfied before we're free, as it were, to love others. One of those is to love ourselves, and the other is to know that we are loved. So self-love is important, and I'm also aware that it can be very demanding and difficult for many of us. And particularly it seems that that's true in modern Western culture. Maybe it's true in other places, I don't know. But so some tips for that are, if you don't find metta, self-metta, easy, if you find it challenging, first of all, don't get disheartened from practicing the Metta Bhavana. If the first stage of that practice is the hardest for you, don't worry. Sort of acknowledge what's going on for you in that first stage with as much patience and gentleness as you can, but then do move on to the other stages. The reason I say that is that sometimes our metta for ourselves grows out of our sense of metta for other people. If we can genuinely feel metta for other people, we can start to feel better about ourselves. They go sort of hand in hand. I'm not saying that one necessarily precedes the other, but there is this reciprocal relationship. You can still practice Buddhist ethics of generosity and friendliness and kindness and so forth. What you also, though, have to, I think, do is have somebody, ideally somebody who knows you, point out how you can not martyr yourself. It's very easy to somehow be very, very kind and loving towards others, but it's coming from a sort of self-hatred rather than a healthy sense of self. And if that's the case, then I think you need to look at, well, what is that rooted in? I think the Metta Bhavana over time will undermine any sense of self-hatred, but it's not straightforward, and it might take a long time. I think that sometimes therapy might help, looking at our past and our conditioning and trying to come to terms with that conditioning. Sometimes friendship really helps. Sometimes just recognizing that we don't really have to like all of ourselves. Sitting a bit looser to our expectations of ourselves. One of the I think problems around self-dislike, self-hatred, whatever, is that we have huge expectations of ourselves. We have this expectation that we should be perfect, perfect in every aspect of our being and every aspect of our life. And of course we fall short. Everybody falls short. But if our expectations are very rigid and high and held very tightly, then we somehow just torment ourselves for never being good enough. I know it's a habit that one can get into, and it runs very deep for some people. It goes right back to early childhood, and it's not easy to unseat. But it is worth looking at, well, what are my expectations of myself? And do I need to have them? Do I need such high expectations? I think the fact that all of us here are trying to practice the Dharma, trying to meditate, trying to practice ethics, trying to grow, I think you could really take heart in that. You could really take heart in the fact that you're practicing. That, to me, feels like good enough in a certain sense. I can remember when I first started doing the Metta Bhavana practice, I was so pleased with myself that I was finally practicing, that in a way metta naturally flowed for myself and for other people. I think it is good enough if we're on the path. That's all that one can ask of oneself, that we're on the path of growth. It doesn't really matter where we are on that, and it's fine to keep falling short. Buddhism presents us with the most lofty ideals, and that can be wonderful. Well, it can be like a guiding star, an inspiration to orientate our lives by, the ideal of enlightenment, the ideal of what, of service, where you're prepared to just surrender everything for another person. But we can also use those ideals, those very lofty ideals, to beat ourselves up with and think, oh, I've fallen short again. I've fallen short. I'll never be like, the Buddha, or I'll never be like Dola Jigme Khalsang, or whoever it is. And then I think we've just somehow got those ideals wrong. I mean, we've held them in the wrong way. I think it is okay to just be on the path and use an ideal to orientate ourselves by. It doesn't matter how far we get. If we're practicing, then I think we're living a meaningful life. And if we're living a meaningful life, I don't know, I think that's just extraordinarily wonderful. So what I'm trying to say is that there are different ways of looking at ourselves, and part of the art of overcoming self-hatred, or whatever it is, lack of self-metta, is to reframe our experience in more real terms. Yeah. I hope that helps. But you can work with, even if there's lack of self-metta, what Buddhism says is that there is, even if we don't like ourselves, there is still self-cherishing, in that I could really dislike who I am, but probably I'm still preoccupied with myself. So there is self-cherishing. That cherishing is, I think, a good word for it. And and that's natural. It's not something else to then dislike myself about. It's natural for unenlightened beings to have oneself at the center of one's world. But the metta practice is about recognizing that other human beings also cherish themselves and are just like us. So can I learn to empathize with them, just as I want to be happy, even though I don't like myself? Other human beings are in the same boat. So do you see, even if I don't feel good about myself, I can learn to empathize. Yeah, that would be part of the path. There's probably lots more to say, but I want to move on. So there was another question, Jnanavaca, you were asking, and I said I'd park that. Do you want to come back to that?
You've answered.
Have I?
Yeah, it was.
Was it about the ideal?
It was about the contradiction between having practicing Metta Bhavana intensely and feeling that person's falling short.
Oh yeah.
Of say, nurses and doctors in the NHS.
I see. Sorry, I was slightly thrown by the nurses and doctors in the NHS. But yes, there's ways of falling short. We will always fall short. of an ideal that the Dharma presents. Yeah. Another question, Jnanavaca?
There's a question about.
Maybe one more. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's so many questions.
Hmm.
Maybe the benefits of metta for loneliness in this time when a lot of people are on their own.
Yeah, loneliness. Metta really will help loneliness. I know that for a fact. I mean, I'm not lonely at the moment, partly because I'm surrounded by lots of friends. I live with 9 other people. But I have been on solitary retreats, and some of you, as I've talked about, a few years ago, 2 years ago or so, I was on a long solitary retreat for 6 months. So I was on my own up a Spanish mountain for 6 months. And occasionally I bumped into people, but I didn't want to talk to them. So I was alone. And at times I would feel lonely. There would be loneliness. Not as much as maybe I anticipated, but at times I did feel loneliness. And invariably, if I did the Metta Bhavana, I would feel connected. I would feel this sense that that I wasn't alone. Physically, of course, I was, but I felt intimately connected with people that I brought to mind. Both people that I knew, friends and so forth, but also a sense of feeling connected to the world. The Metta Bhavana transcends that, as I say, the physical separation that we're in. So in this lockdown, many of us are living alone and probably suffering from loneliness. And somehow we need to connect with something that transcends that physical separation, and the consciousness does, and Metta definitely does. So yeah, the Metta Bhavana is a real gift if you're feeling lonely. Try it. Not just the Metta Bhavana. Puja often does this as well, for me anyway. So try. We're going to finish in a few moments with a puja, but you can do puja on your own. See if that works. It does for me. Yeah. Maybe one more, Jnanavaca.
Okay. A question about in the story that you told. Might to repeat my question. Whether the Tibetan character whose name I've forgotten would have sacrificed his life had he known that the person was said paedophile or mass murderer. So is compassion universal? All humans deserving of forgiveness.
Oh, yeah, okay. So there's quite a lot there. But the question was in the story with Dolajigme Khalsang, would he have sacrificed himself had the person been a mass murderer or paedophile, or, not just a thief, but done something much worse? I don't think Dolajigme Khalsang was bothered about what the crime was. The story uses the word thief, but I don't think that he would have been bothered. He wouldn't have wanted to see another human being suffering, and he would have known that he could somehow bear that suffering through his practice. So for him, that exchange of self and other, that practice which he had been doing for many years, would have seemed the most natural thing to do with another human being. So metta isn't conditional at its height. I know that for us it might feel that way sometimes, but the ideal isn't conditional. It's unconditioned love. It's a Buddha, an enlightened being, would see the potential for enlightenment in all human beings. And that's what they would be relating to, not the behavior, the outward behavior, no matter how shocking, appalling, or horrendous that would be. Yeah. So yes, it's a very lofty ideal, this ideal of unconditional metta. Yeah. And of course, the questioner brought in forgiveness, and yeah, that's somewhere. Well, I won't have time to unpack that, but forgiveness would be it's intimately bound with this unconditional love. Yeah. But you don't have to just treat the story. I mean, it is a true story, as I say, but you don't have to just treat it as some sort of fantasy that applies to 19th century Tibetans. If you keep practicing the Metta Bhavana, if you keep practicing the Dharma, if we do that, we will move closer to that unconditional love. I don't know, after 25 years or more of practice, whether I could, I probably don't think I could have done what Dole Jigme Khalsang did. But as I was saying, I'm on the path, and I'm a little less self-centered than I used to be. So I know that it's possible to change and to grow. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I'm going to start wrapping up because I'd like us to finish with a puja, but I'm sorry if not to have got to all the questions. Seems like there were more questions, and you might want to. Well, I was going to say I might come back to them on Friday, but I won't. You might want to. I'm here again on Friday, so you can ask them again. I want to talk about this story again on Friday, but from a wisdom perspective. So before we go into the puja, just once again, I want to say, well, first of all, thank you if you've been donating money to the London Buddhist Centre. And just to reiterate that we could really do with more money at a time like this of lockdown, when all our activities have stopped. Most of our activities have stopped. Retreats have stopped and courses have stopped. Most of our income, a lot of our income anyway, has dried up. So if you can give, that would be very, very helpful. DM is going to post the link in the chat. I also want to stress that everything on this retreat is free, so you really don't have to give. I want to keep asking for money, but you must feel free to not give if you don't want to, or you can't, if you're not in a position to. That's completely fine as well. At the same time, it would be great if you could give, and if you're in a position to, we had a suggested donation for this retreat of £100. If everybody who could afford to gave £100 who was on this retreat, that would really help. That would be amazing, in fact. So a suggested donation of £100. But if you're not able to do that, that's okay as well. Or if you can give more, indeed, as some people are, then that's fantastic as well. Good. Okay, so I'd like us to finish, as Subhadramati did last night, with a threefold puja. And in a way, we're ritually dedicating ourselves to a life of metta, a life of love in the puja. The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is what we're orientating to. And in a way, that is an ideal of love. So if you'd like to settle comfortably, sit comfortably again. So in the puja, Jnanavaca is going to begin by reading the first 6 verses of the Dhammapada, as translated by Bhante Sangharakshita. He's going to read those verses, and well, you'll just see the relevance of those verses to what I've been talking about. They're the words of the Buddha. And then we'll recite in call and response the threefold puja. So I've got Guillaume and Jnanavaca here who will be responding, and you'll hear them hopefully responding. And then we'll finish with the Shakyamuni mantra. So I'll start us off in the Shakyamuni mantra, and then do join in. Do join in with the response of the puja as well, even though it might feel a bit strange to be doing that on your own in your room. do join in with that. And and then after the mantra dies away, during the mantra, actually, the three of us in this room will make offerings to the shrine, and you might want to make offerings to your shrine. After the mantra dies away, we're gonna. I'll probably get up and leave your frame, as it were, the frame of leave your view, and then you can sit on for another moment or two, minute or two, couple of minutes, if you want to, and we'll leave the camera running so you can look at the shrine. And then at the end of about a couple of minutes or so, DM or Jnanavaca or both will snuff out the candles on the shrine, and then that will be the end of the YouTube broadcast. Yeah. Okay, good. So settling down. Puja.
Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows, even as the cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox drawing the cart. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never departs. Those who entertain such thoughts as they abused me, they beat me, they conquered me, they robbed me, will not still their hatred. Those who do not entertain such thoughts as they abused me, they beat me, they conquered me, they robbed me, will still their hatred. Not by hatred are hatreds ever pacified here in the world. They are pacified by love. This is the eternal law. Others do not realize that we are all heading for death. Those who realize it will compose their quarrels.
Opening reverence. We reverence the Buddha.
We reverence the Buddha,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the shower of the way.
the shower of the way.
We reverence the Dharma,
We reverence the Dharma,
the teaching of the Buddha,
the teaching of the Buddha,
which leads from darkness to light.
which leads from darkness to light.
We reverence the Sangha,
We reverence the Sangha,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
that inspires and guides.
that inspires and guides.
Reverence to the three jewels. We reverence the Buddha
We reverence the Buddha
and aspire to follow him.
and aspire to follow him.
The Buddha was born
The Buddha was born
as we are born.
as we are born.
What the Buddha overcame,
What the Buddha overcame,
we too can overcome.
we too can overcome.
What the Buddha attained,
What the Buddha attained,
we too can attain.
we too can attain.
We reverence the Dharma,
We reverence the Dharma
and aspire to follow it
and aspire to follow it
with body, speech, and mind
with body, speech, and mind
until the end.
until the end.
The truth in all its aspects,
The truth in all its aspects,
the path in all its stages.
the path in all its stages.
We aspire to study,
We aspire to study,
practice, realize.
realize.
We reverence the Sangha
We reverence the Sangha
and aspire to follow it.
and aspire to follow it.
The fellowship of those
The fellowship of those
who tread the way.
who tread the way,
As one by one,
as one by one,
we make our own commitment,
we make our own commitment,
an ever widening Sangha.
an ever widening Sangha.
The Sangha grows.
The Sangha grows.
Offerings to the Buddha. Reverencing the Buddha.
Reverencing the Buddha.
We offer flowers.
We offer flowers.
Flowers that today
Flowers that today
are fresh and sweetly blooming.
are fresh and sweetly blooming.
Flowers that tomorrow
Flowers that tomorrow
are faded and fallen.
are faded and fallen.
Our bodies too, like flowers,
Our bodies too, like flowers,
will pass away.
will pass away.
Reverencing the Buddha.
Reverencing the Buddha.
We offer candles
We offer candles
to Him who is the light.
to Him who is the light.
We offer light
We offer light
from His greater lamp,
from His greater lamp.
a lesser lamp we light within us,
A lesser lamp we light within us.
the lamp of Bodhi,
The lamp of Bodhi
shining within our hearts.
shining within our hearts.
Reverencing the Buddha.
Reverencing the Buddha.
We offer incense,
We offer incense.
incense whose fragrance
Incense whose fragrance
pervades the air,
pervades the air.
the fragrance of the perfect life,
The fragrance of the perfect life.
sweeter than incense,
Sweeter than incense.
spreads in all directions
Spreads in all directions.
throughout the world.
Throughout the world.
Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. 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 Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a very good evening and a good day tomorrow on retreat. See you soon.